haven't done anything to change, to take away the tools, the keys of the jailer who is just arbitrarily jailing these people and is actually hurting people. So, oh, I had a second point too. I forgot what it was. Sorry, but I guess my main point is that there's not enough of a distinction here. And if you look at this bill, what they're trying to do is craft something that sounds reasonable enough on the surface that they can say, well, look, we tried to do something, but Democrats wouldn't work with us. They're the ones making this into a political issue. But if you read the bill, if you look at the various essentials, and they didn't really get into some of the stuff here, but this is a bill that actually gives Trump everything he wants. His wall, which is an utterly useless waste of money, and a big slap in the face to people south of the border, and any number of other things like that. I mean, it's just a complete waste of time. So fiscally responsive? Not at all. Excuse me, fiscally responsible? Not even a little bit. $25 billion to build a wall? A totally useless thing that can't even really work? Wouldn't really do anything? It's just stupid. And beyond that, they include all his other little pet things about changing legal immigration. So this is an anti-immigration bill. But they've included a little bit like, oh, we'll help out the DACA kids and, you know, this and that. I mean, they've included a couple little things in there that like, yeah, these are good things. Well, yeah, they are. And if we could vote for them by themselves, we sure would. But we can't because they don't include it by itself. It's like buying your cable package for your TV. Oh, you want to get the movie channel and the Home and Garden network or whatever it is? Well, you just have to take 14 channels of ESPN, even though you don't care about sports, and you've got to have Fox News. You know, I mean, it's just that kind of crap. They shove it together, and no matter what you try to do, if you want this stuff, you got to take this other stuff, and then so if you don't, they can say, well, look, you must not have wanted this because we offered it to you and you turned it down. That's the game of politics. That's how politics are played, and both sides do that. I'm not saying that's just a Republican ploy, but in this case, it demonstrates that the majority of so-called self-styled conservatives are not that different from Trump in terms of what they would like to accomplish. They're just different in how they would like to do it, how they would like to be seen doing it, or whether they'd like to be seen. They'd like to not be seen. They'd like to just kind of do it without being, well, you're really noticing. They're just doing this thing over here and like, look at this. Okay, isn't that nice? All right, yeah, we did that. And then all this over there, you didn't notice. So like the tax cut thing, where all the money went, pretty much everything went to just millionaires and billionaires who are now even multimillionaires and multi-billionaires, and the rest of us get nothing except bills from now to eternity. But we're not supposed to notice that. So anyway, that's why if I rail against Republicans, it's because they either aren't that different from Trump, basically, who I think is a monster. I'll just state it right here. Or they're willing to support all of this in order to further the conservative agenda. So it's like basically even the most reasonable sounding Republican who votes with these guys is basically saying, not so many words, I don't care how this is accomplished. I just want it to be accomplished. Money for rich people, defense of rich people, I want it to be accomplished. Defense of the dominant culture, white people against everybody else, I want that done. Keep people of color out or keep them down, that's what I want. I mean, basically, whether they say it or not, that's what they're doing. And if you vote for that, you better want that because that's what you're going to get, regardless of what else you think you're voting for. And this is a good time to read the disclaimer again. WRFU is an open forum for the Urbana-Champaign community. Views expressed are those of the speakers, myself, and are not intended to represent WRFU, UC IMC, Urbana Socialist Forum, or UPTV. These are my opinions, my views, and I don't know. You can argue with them if you want, but I'm going to say right now, I think you're wrong. Because I'm not claiming anything that isn't pretty obvious if you look at all the information that's available. It's all just right there. So I'm not saying anything wild or crazy. You may not like to hear it, but it's not really very debatable. So speaking of separating children, what's that like? Let's read this article here. So this is a survivor's perspective. And it reads as follows. The events occurring now on our border with Mexico, where children are being removed from the arms of their mothers and fathers and sent to foster families or shelters, makes me weep and gnash my teeth with sadness and rage. I know what they're going through. When we were children, my two siblings and I were also taken from our parents. And the problems we've experienced since then portend the terrible things that many of these children are bound to suffer. My family was Jewish, living in 1942 in the Netherlands when the country was occupied by the Nazis. We children were sent into hiding with foster families who risked arrest and death by taking us in. They protected us, they loved us, and we were extremely lucky to have survived the war and been well cared for. Yet, the lasting damage inflicted by that separation reverberates to this day, decades hence. Have you heard the screams and seen the panic of a 3-year-old when it has lost sight of its mother in a supermarket? That scream subsides when mother reappears around the end of the aisle. This is my brother writing in recent years. He tries to deal with his lasting pain through memoir. It's been 76 years, yet he revisits the separation obsessively. He still writes about it in the present tense. In the first home, I screamed for 6 weeks. Then I moved to another family and I stopped screaming. I give up. Nothing around me is known to me. All those around me are strangers. I have no past. I have no future. I have no identity. I am nowhere. I am frozen in fear. It is the only emotion I possess now. As a 3-year-old child, I believe that I must have made some terrible mistake to have caused my known world to disappear. I spend the rest of my life trying desperately not to make another mistake. My brother's second foster family cared deeply about him and has kept in touch with him all these years. Even so, he is almost 80 years old now and is still trying to understand what made him the anxious and dysfunctional person he turned into as a child and has remained for the rest of his life. A man with charm and intelligence, yet who could never keep a job because of his inability to complete tasks. After all, if he persisted, he might make a mistake again, and that would bring his world to another end. My younger sister was separated from our parents at 5. She had no understanding of what was going on and why she suddenly had to live with a strange set of adults. She suffered thereafter from lifelong, profound depression. I was older, 7. I was more able than my siblings to understand what was happening and why. I spent most of the war with Dick and Ellen Ginders, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Dick was mayor of a small rural village, and he and Ella lived in a beautiful house next to a wide waterway. Ella had a warm smile, and Dick referred to me as his oldest daughter. I was able to go to school normally, make friends, and become part of village life. I was extraordinarily lucky, but I was not with my own parents, sister, and brother, and eventually I also had to leave the Ringers, my second loving family. I was returned to my own family, but this meant another separation. In later life, I was never able to really settle down. I lived in different countries and was successful in work, but never able to form lasting relationships with partners. I never married. I almost forgot to mention my own anxiety and depression and my many years in psychotherapy. My grief and anger about today's southern border come not just from my personal life. As a retired psychotherapist who has worked extensively with victims of childhood trauma, I know all too well what awaits many of the thousands of children taken by our government at the border who are now in processing centers and foster homes. No matter how decent and caring those places might be, we can expect thousands of lives to be damaged for many years or forever by zero tolerance. We can expect old men and women decades from now still suffering, still remembering, still writing in the present tense. What is happening in our own backyard today is as evil and criminal as what happened to me and my siblings as children in Nazi Europe. It needs to be stopped immediately. So there's a point to think about. So we have, on this one hand, God, there's so many different pieces to this puzzle. So we have this group of people, these anti-immigration people who are like, well, it's their own fault. They shouldn't be coming here. Now, these people don't care, don't know, and don't care why anybody's coming here. Why they would risk it. Why do people travel hundreds and even thousands of miles to get to a country that they know pretty much doesn't want them? Why would you do that? There must be something you're running from or running to that makes it worth the risk, that makes you willing to try to do this despite what could happen to you. Now, it's easy. It's really easy to sit here and go, well, yeah, but they should know better. They shouldn't do it. They should just do something else. But what else? What else do you do? If there were something else for you to do, given the situation, given what you know about this country, what you've read about it, everything that you know about this crackdown on immigration and all that stuff, I would think you would do that something else, whatever it was. That something else that seemed more doable. So clearly there must not be something else for you to do that you are aware of. That's all I can assume. Given the current state of affairs here, there must not be an alternative that seems better to you than risking what you're going to get when you get here, which is going to jail. And apparently now, on top of going to jail, is having your family ripped apart, maybe to come back together at some point, presumably to come back together at some point, but not until damage has been done. When you're a little kid like this, you don't know what's going on. And I hate to get into this fault thing. This is the whole problem with talking about the DACA thing, which we have discussed so many times that you know, I don't want to go really deeply into it because it's pretty much a continuous. We've read that, we've been around and around and around on this point, but the whole idea of fault, like they came here, it's not their fault that they came here, somehow implies that it is the fault of the parents. The parents are at fault for doing this, but the parents are doing what all parents do, which is trying to look out for their family, trying to take care of things as best they can. I don't have children. It's hard for me to relate to this, but I know I've had dogs. I don't know how close that comes to being like children, but I've had dogs, and I've had my dogs get out of the yard and just run away in the past. And that feeling of, I don't even know how to describe it. I'm sure you, if you're a parent or if you're a pet owner or whatever, you have some idea of the feeling, even if I can't really put it into words, but it's something I am responsible for that is now out of my control. I can't be responsible for this thing that I'm responsible for. And that feeling of obligation, that feeling, that sense of like, It's sort of panic, it's fear, it's a lot of different kinds of things. I am supposed to be taking care of this thing, and I do my best to take care of it. I provide love and shelter and food and comfort and all these different things, but suddenly something's happened and I'm no longer able to do that. That's a really disturbing feeling, and that's as an adult who can think these things carefully and go, well, the dog ran away. It's probably somebody found it. It's, whatever. You can figure these things out. You know that there's a possibility that it was hit by a car, that bad things could happen. But there's also a really good possibility that it's okay. It's just running around sniffing stuff and, digging in somebody's garden and making them mad or whatever. You can balance all those things. That's as an adult. But these are kids. And whatever you can say about anything about their parents, let's put it that way. We'll not talk fault here, but whatever you can say about their parents, it's not the kids' fault that they have come here, and what you do to them, you are doing to someone who has done nothing to you. Let's look at it like that. What you do to the parents is a thing. They have made a choice. Maybe they didn't really have a choice, but let's say they made a choice anyway. The choice is between being killed or starving to death or going here and risking this. So be that as it's may, they have made a choice. They are able to make those choices. The kids are not able to make those choices. So you can't point at anything they have done and say that what we're doing to them now, they deserve. So even though all these anti-immigrant people who are always like, well, they're coming here, it's their own fault. It's not the kid's fault. It's not a 2-year-old's fault. It's not a 3-year-old's fault. It's not a 10-year-old's fault. They didn't do anything. And you are terrorizing them, putting them in cages, locking them up. They don't really know what's going on. They may have some idea about what's going on, but not really much beyond a vague idea. Do you remember what it was like to be a little kid? I do. It was overwhelming. It was like the whole world was big. It seemed to just kind of rush along, and you were just kind of there going, "Ooh, I hope I don't get run over." That's kind of what being a little kid is like. There are moments where you feel safe enough to kind of explore and do things, but there are lots of moments, particularly busy, bustling places where you're just like, you feel like what you are, a very small thing that could easily be stepped on. And that's what it's like to be a little kid. And then you take those kids and you lock them up in cages. Think about that. So there is a recording going around the internet that somebody recorded inside one of these detention centers. I'm not going to play it, partly because I don't, frankly, I don't think I could listen to it. And it's not mine to play, so I just think that it's, probably copyrighted material or whatever. But I'll read you this short thing about it. It says, a recording of immigrant children calling out desperately for their parents after being separated from them by United States immigration authorities was released on Monday by the investigative news site ProPublica. The recording, nearly 8 minutes in length, added disturbing and intimate notes to the debate over the Trump administration's policy of separating children from their parents when families are detained at the border. ProPublica said in an article accompanying the audio clip that it was recorded last week inside a U.S. Customs and Border Protection detention center. 10 Central American children who were separated from their parents by immigration authorities are heard in the clip, along with some adults. The news service said the recording was provided to Jennifer Harbury, a civil rights lawyer, by a person who wished to remain anonymous. Ms. Harbury then provided the recording to ProPublica. At one point, a child identified in the article as a 6-year-old Salvadoran girl is heard asking someone to call her aunt. My mommy says that I'll go with my aunt, she says in Spanish, and that she'll come to pick me up there as quickly as possible. At another point, a voice belonging to a man identified by ProPublica as a Border Patrol agent speaks over the crying children. Well, we have an orchestra here, the man says. What's missing is a conductor. So think about that just a little bit. And I have just a few minutes left. I have one more thing here, or actually I have a couple of things. Here's another story. At Ursula, an immigration facility in McAllen, Texas, 500 children separated from their families are crammed 20 to a cage. And these are literally cages. They're like dog runs. They're chain link. And in some cases, they're like big dog kennel cages. They're cages with kids in them. It's a home to kids of all ages, from toddlers to young teens. Once a teen turns 18, they are magically converted into a criminal and moved to an adult facility. According to an advocate who was allowed to visit the children, a teenager in one cage has been teaching other kids to change the diapers of the toddlers they are caged with, whose adult family members are imprisoned elsewhere. It's a rare glimpse into life inside the largely secret prison camps. At this time, sitting U.S. congressmen and other officials have been denied entry, as has the press. A U.S. Border Patrol official quoted by the AP said the policy of separating children from their parents was intended as a deterrent to others, a tacit admission that the policy is deliberately and performatively cruel. An Ipsos Daily Beast poll of 1,000 adults conducted on June 14th and 15th found that 46% of Republicans support the policy of separating children from their parents at the border. Donald Trump has falsely claimed that Democrats are responsible for the policy of separating children from their parents. Michelle Brain, director of migrant rights at the Women's Refugee Commission, met a 16-year-old girl who had been taking care of a young girl for 3 days. The teen and others in their cage thought the girl was 2 years old. She had to teach other kids in the cell to change her diaper, Brain said. Brain said that after an attorney started to ask questions, agents found the girl's aunt and reunited the two. It turned out that the girl was actually 4 years old. Part of the problem was that she didn't speak Spanish, but Quechua, a language indigenous to Guatemala. She was so traumatized that she wasn't talking, Brain said. She was just curled up into a little ball. So, I don't know, maybe you would have to have, maybe if you had like a, I don't know, a happy-go-lucky life where nothing bad ever happened to you as a kid, you remember being a small child, you remember your childhood as being a time of just fun and you're carefree. The only bad thing was when you had to go to bed or eat your spinach maybe, or, you know, something like that. I mean, if that's the kind of childhood you have, then maybe you would look at this and go, oh, well, this isn't so bad. It's kind of like a vacation. Yeah, you're locked up, but hey, it's not our fault. Your parents brought you here. Blame them. So apparently it's not our fault what we do about it. It's their fault for coming here. If they didn't want this to happen, they shouldn't come here. And so it's the time-honored blame the victim thing, you know. You shouldn't have been talking back to me. I wouldn't have hit you if you hadn't been talking back to me. But I think enough adults have had some problems in their childhood that we should be able to sympathize on a level that's much deeper than just kind of looking at that as something over there and thinking, oh, well, that's kind of a bad thing. That shouldn't be happening. But really, like, imagine being this kid. First of all, you're going on a journey. You don't know where you're going or what's going on or why you're going, or, you know, No one sat down. Maybe they sat down and told you, okay, we're going to America, or we're going to try to do this, but you probably didn't understand it. All you knew is, oh, we're going away to strange places, and starting from the moment you step out your door, everything's going to be kind of different and scary. So that's hard enough. Just the journey is kind of traumatic. Might have some exciting moments. It kind of depends on how your family is, whether they're, they've supported you and kept you feeling safe and protected or not. I don't know. It's hard to say for a lot of these kids what that would be like, but the journey would be anything from kind of scary to really, really scary. And then you get here and strangers come and just so you're thrown into jail, basically. You're 4 years old, but you're tossed into jail. You're in a cage. You're locked up. I don't know what else you would call that. It's jail. It's baby jail. I can imagine vaguely what that would be like. Not really well, because that obviously never happened to me. But I remember being taken by my parents when I was really young. I don't know how old I was, and being dropped off at like a swim class or something, some kind of class and I had no idea what was going on. I was just like, they just said, here you go. They left me there. They went away, and I'm just like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I don't know who any of these other people are. I don't know where anything is. I don't know if I can leave, if I can stay. I have no idea. I am paralyzed. As an adult, you can context, framework. You have some sense of how things work and what kinds of things may or may not happen. As a kid, you don't know. They could put you in a cage and put lions in there and just laugh while they eat you up. You have no idea. I mean, it could happen to you. You have just absolutely no sense. This is beyond cruel in any way that I can think of. And I don't care. You can blame all the parents you want for anything you want, but this activity of locking these kids up is just ridiculously, obscenely cruel to them. It is hurtful. It is hurting them in ways that they will, as this one commenter said, will never recover from. Never entirely. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know what else to say. I don't know. I'm assuming, like I've said before, if you listen to this show, you're probably enough on the side of caring about immigrants and people that I'm kind of preaching to the choir, sort of, I guess, in a way here, and telling people who already care about this stuff and already care about people things that they may not know or they may have heard something about, maybe giving you a little more context. And if that's all I'm doing, that's fine. I mean, I just want people to understand this stuff. But if you can excuse this in any way, then I don't understand you. You make no sense to me. Thanks for listening.